So we have created a new Flutter project, we have executed the default code, and we have seen the default app, which is a pretty simple one. Now we are going to explore the default code because there are lots of basic concepts to learn from this code. So you have to start here. Click on this button, Project, and select Project from this drop-down menu. Now you will find the directory structure of a Flutter project. But don't get overwhelmed by all of these different directories and files. For now, just focus on this folder lib and this file pubspec.yaml. We are going to learn more about this pubspec.yaml file during this course. For now, just keep in mind that this is kind of a configuration file. We have to specify the different dependencies of the app here. We have to specify the different resources our app is going to use in this file. Now come to this folder lib. This is where we are going to write all our code for the Flutter app. And the Flutter apps are written using the language Dart. So you will find different files with .dart extension here. In this case, as this default app is a pretty simple one, we have only one file inside this folder, main.dart. This file is responsible for the complete app. But in our case, by the end of the project, we will have multiple files here. Now for the ease of exploring the code, first I'll collapse these comment portions. You can do that too by bringing your cursor to the portion that you want to collapse and then pressing Ctrl and the greater than symbol together. And this applies to functions and classes too. So if you want to collapse the code of a function for the time being, then you can do that by bringing your cursor to the function and then pressing Ctrl and the greater than symbol. And if you press this same shortcut once again, then it will expand. Now divide this complete code into three main sections. The first is the main function. The second is this stateless widget, my app. And the third section is this one, the stateful widget, my homepage. Here we have two classes. Why? I'll tell you soon. But first let us focus on the first section. I'll collapse these classes for clarity. Now let us take a look at this main function. This is the entry point of the program. Without a main function, you won't be able to execute the code. Try it yourself. Comment out this main function and then try to run the app. You won't be able to run and you will notice a red cross mark here indicating that the main function is missing and you cannot execute this code. Uncomment it again and this cross mark disappears. Next you will notice this function run app being called inside this main function. This function is responsible for loading a widget on the screen. Now what is a widget? In Flutter, everything is a widget. If you want to display text on the screen, you have to use a widget called text. If you want to display a button, you have to use one of the many available widgets for displaying a button. For a list, you have to use the widget called list view. And we shall explore more widgets during this course. The widget to be loaded has to be passed to this function run app. Try passing an instance of the widget text yourself. This widget is responsible for displaying a text on the screen, and the text to be displayed has to be passed as the first parameter of the constructor. And we also have to pass a value for the property text direction. Some languages are read from left to right and some others are from right to left, right? And here with this property we have to specify which direction this text widget should follow. And for that we have to use an enum called text direction that has two properties, LTR for left to right and RTL for right to left. So here we are going to pass text direction dot LTR for left to right. You don't have to worry much about this because from the next step onwards we won't need to pass this property manually. Now run the app and now you'll notice the text on the screen which is almost hidden at the top left corner under the status bar. And to bring this to the center of the screen, we have to use another widget called center. The widget center is an inbuilt widget provided by the framework for centering widgets inside their parents. So what you have to do is you have to wrap this text widget by an instance of the center widget. Let me show you how to do that. The widget center has a property called child, and you have to pass the instance of the widget which you want to place at the center to the property child. So here, instead of the text widget, we have to pass an instance of the center widget to the function runApp, and this center widget has a property child, and to this property we have to pass the instance of the text widget. Now there is a shortcut for doing this easily. All you have to do is to take your cursor to the name of the widget which you want to wrap by another widget, in this case the center widget, and then press Alt Enter. This menu will appear, and from here you can select different options like wrap with the widget center, wrap with padding, and other options. So here we are going to select center, but if you don't find the widget with which you want to wrap in this menu, then you can select the first option, wrap with widget, and you can provide the name manually. If you run the app now, you will notice the text at the center of the screen. Now notice the structure, the syntax of the code that we have added just now. We have added a widget which has a property child. To the property child we have added another widget. So basically we have created a tree of widgets, and this is the way of creating layouts in Flutter. In this case our tree is a simple one, we have only 2 widgets, but as the layout gets complex, the widget tree gets bigger. We keep on adding widgets and then widgets and widgets. You will notice this structure everywhere while creating layouts in Flutter. Now you will notice a gray underline here. Take your cursor on it and you will get a message. Prefer constant with constant constructors. Whenever you get this message, add the constant modifier in front of this function. This improves the performance. And if you pass any variable to the constructors, you won't be able to use this constant. We have seen how to display a text on the screen, but we want to display a complete app, a page of an app on the screen, right? And here we are going to display a material design app. And for that we have to use a widget called MaterialApp of the Flutter framework. If you want to create a iOS style app, then you have to use the widget, the equivalent widget called Cupertino app. So MaterialApp is a widget provided by Flutter to make it easier to create a material design app. It provides us lots of things, components that are often required for creating a material design app. So we have to return the instance of MaterialApp from this function runApp, and this MaterialApp has a property called home. To this property home we have to pass the widget that we want to load as the home page. Whenever the app is opened, the widget passed to home page will be loaded on the screen. So now if we pass our previous widget tree, the center and text, and run the app, then we will notice the text being displayed at the center, but in a little different way. But still this is not what we want, right? We want to make it look like a proper page of an app, and for that there is another widget called Scaffold. We are going to pass an instance of the widget Scaffold to this property home, and the Scaffold has a property called body, and to this property body we have to pass an widget representing the body or main content portion of the page. So pass the previous widget tree here. Now if we run the app looks a lot different. Now to make it look even better, let us add an AppBar, and for that there is another property of this widget Scaffold called AppBar. To the property AppBar we have to pass an instance of another inbuilt widget called AppBar. This AppBar class has a property called title, to which we have to pass an instance of the widget text with the text to be displayed on the AppBar. Now here we are getting an error because this constructor AppBar is not a constant constructor, and thus we cannot use constant for a widget above this on the widget tree. So remove this constant from the MaterialApp, and instead we can add constant in front of these widgets. text and center. Now save the changes and you will notice a beautiful app bar with the text as the title of the app bar. Now notice that this time in the text widget we have not passed the value for the property text direction because this will be taken care of by the MaterialApp widget. So we can remove the text direction from this text widget too. Now before we proceed to the next section, let us take a close look at the syntax of the widgets. So these are basically some inbuilt classes of the framework and they have different fields for the different properties of the widgets, and we can use the specific properties that we are concerned about. For example, this class Scaffold has lots of different properties. We are using only two of them. We are using one for adding the body of the page and another for adding an app bar. And notice the syntax here. We have to specify the name of the property, then add a colon and then provide the appropriate value. Now we can add more components by providing values for the corresponding properties. For example, if you want to display a navigation drawer, the sliding menu on your page, then you can add another property called drawer and then provide the appropriate value to it. And if you keep pressing the control key and click on the name of a class or a function, then this will take you to the source code of that function or the class, and there you can take a look at the different properties and read the relevant documentation. Now focus on the second section. To organize the code a little better, instead of passing the MaterialApp directly to the runApp function, we can create a separate widget and then pass the widget, the new widget, to the runApp function. And this is what is being done with this MyApp widget here. This MyApp widget is created to hold the app level configurations. So you will find the MaterialApp widget here. And for the screens, separate widgets are created. And as for this app, for this project, we have only one page, one screen. So we have only one widget apart from this MyApp widget. Now inside the main function, let us remove the code that we have added and let's bring this to its original state by passing an instance of the widget MyApp to this function runApp. Now notice that this class MyApp extends the class Stateless Widget of the framework. So what is a Stateless Widget? In Flutter, there are mainly two types of widgets: Stateless widgets and Stateful widgets. Stateful widgets are used when we need to make changes to the widget dynamically. If there is nothing to change dynamically in the widget, then a stateless widget is the best option. For example, if we have a screen where we have a text and we have a button, and on clicking the button we change the text, then we have to use a stateful widget because we are changing the text. But if we have a text that does not change, then we can use a stateless widget. In this default app, there is nothing to change in the properties of the MaterialApp widget itself. Thus, it extends stateless widget. An alternative situation can be imagined where we would like to change the theme of the app dynamically. Then extending a stateful widget would make sense. A stateless widget must implement the build function, and this build function is responsible for creating the layout of the widget. We have to return the widget tree representing the layout of the widget from this function. So from the build function of this MyApp widget, we are returning an instance of the MaterialApp widget, and we are providing values for three of the properties. First is the title, which will be used by the device. Second is the theme. You can change primary swatch property of the theme data here, and the color of the app will change. Finally, home. This is where we have to provide the widget representing the first screen of our app. Again, a new widget has been created and used to represent the home page here. We are also passing a title to the new widget, My Home Page. Now here inside this third section, we have a stateful widget, My Home Page, and we have another class called myHomePageState, which extends the class state. So in a stateful widget, you have to think of the UI in terms of state. For example, consider that we have a page with a background color red, and on clicking a button, it changes to blue. So the page has two states. In the first state, it is red, and in the second state, it is blue. So in this case, we may have a variable to hold the color code of the background color, and on clicking the button, we change the value and then refresh the page. And this is the way stateful widgets work in Flutter. Thus, for every stateful widget, you must have a corresponding state class. A stateful widget extends the class stateful widget. Here my homepage extends this class, and the state class should extend the class state. So here we have this class my homepage state, and it extends this class state. Now ask me, what is this underscore doing here? This makes this class private. In case of a stateful widget, the build function belongs to the state class, so we have to override it here. And inside the state widget class, we have to override a function called createState. This function is called by the framework to associate the instance of state with the stateful widget. So inside my homepage class, we have to implement the function createState, and we are returning an instance of the state class from here. Now the question is, why is my homepage stateful? Because we shall make changes to the widget dynamically. On clicking the floating action button, the text representing the number of times this button has been clicked is displayed. This value is updated. So the state of the widget changes. And for that, we have an integer counter, which is incremented by 1 every time this floating action button is clicked. And the value of this variable is displayed in the second text widget here. The UI related code is written inside this build function as usual. The widget tree for the layout has been created and returned from this function. Now let us explore the widgets one by one. Scaffold, at the root we have this widget scaffold, and we know that it helps us in creating a material design page with AppBars and other material design components. Then we have this AppBar. We are passing an instance of the widget AppBar to the property AppBar. And notice the title being passed here. We are passing widget.title. So what is this? So widget is the reference to the stateful widget to which this state belongs. In this case, my homepage. And the my homepage has a property title that is initialized by the constructor, and we are passing a string while creating an instance of the widget. And this field title can be accessed from the state class with help of this widget reference. So whenever we need to access the fields of the widget class from the state class, then we have to use this widget reference. Then we have this widget center. We know that it places a widget at the center of the parent. Then column, this is interesting. So until now we have seen widgets which has the property called child, to which we can add a widget. Now there are widgets like column and row and some other widgets which can take more than one widgets as child, as children. So this widgets usually has a property called children, and to this property children we have to pass a list of widgets. So here we have a column. A column takes a list of children widgets and organizes them vertically. You can notice that we have a property children instead of child here that takes the list of widgets. In Dart, you can create a list by enclosing comma separated items inside square brackets. And two text widgets are being passed here, one for the message and the other for the counter. And the horizontal counterpart for column is a row which organizes the widgets passed to the children list horizontally. And then we have this floating action button. This widget is used to create a floating action button like this one, as the name suggests. And values are being passed for three properties to this widget. On pressed, this is a function that is called when this button is pressed. Here a function is created to increment the counter variable by 1. So on pressing the floating action button, this function is called. Then tooltip, press and hold the button for a while and this text appears, and this is tooltip. Then child, we can display a widget inside this floating action button with the help of this property. An icon widget is being passed here to display this plus icon inside the button. And to display an icon, we have to pass an icon data to this widget icon. And the icon data describes an icon. And we have a class icons inbuilt in Flutter, which contains the icon data for some of the common material design icons, and add is one of them. So you can type icons and then add a dot, and the ID should show you the list of available icons. You can select one from them. Now let us come back to the increment counter method. Here you can see that the counter variable is being incremented inside setState method. So what is setState? Notice the syntax once. A function is being passed to this function setState, and inside the function, which is an argument, the variable counter is being incremented. So calling setState in this way tells the framework that something has been changed and the UI needs to be rebuilt. The framework will call the build function of the state again to redraw the UI. If you don't call this function, even after changing the value of the counter, the UI will not change, and here we will see 0 itself. So every time the state changes and the UI needs to be rebuilt, we must call setState. You can experiment with this yourself. Comment this call to setState and then increment the counter here and then print the value. Now this is called string interpolation. If you are familiar with the way where the variable to be printed is written outside this code by adding plus, so that is another way. And in string interpolation, which is supported by most of the languages these days, you can add the variable to be printed inside the string itself, inside the quotations. And in Dart, here the way is you have to add this $sign in front of this, then add the variable. And if this is an expression, then you have to use the curly brackets too. Now run the app and press on this floating action button. You will notice that we can see the value being incremented on the console, but on the UI it is still 0. Because we are not calling setState, the framework does not know that the UI needs to be rebuilt, and thus the build function is not called and it is still showing the initial state.